It always seems like successful people had no choice but to succeed. That's how it looks now, looking back across all those years. But was success that obvious in the moment? When you were at the start, when you had nothing except one thing that would end up defining everything. Here's where our three characters are at the beginning of their story. One keeps trying and gets rejected by Toyota twice. Another pushes forward and goes bankrupt at 21 with $40 and one suitcase. And the woman who built one of the most recognizable fashion houses in history started by making hats in a borrowed room. Before the parks, before the motorcycles, before the perfume, each of them had one thing. Not money, not power, not a plan big enough to explain everything that came later. A skill. Just one skill. One could draw. One could fix. One could see, clearly and coldly, what everyone else had stopped noticing. And each of them found someone willing to pay for it. This is the story of how that happened. The world was changing. In the early 1900s, the old order was cracking open. Factories were replacing craftsmen. Cities were swallowing villages. Electricity was turning night into day. The world was shifting so fast, nobody could predict what it would become. Sound familiar? And somewhere inside all that noise, three young people were sitting with a skill they didn't quite know what to do with yet. They didn't know each other. They lived on opposite sides of the earth, spoke different languages, moved in completely different worlds. But they were living through the same moment in history. A moment when the world suddenly was ready to pay for something new. Kansas City, Missouri, 1919. Walt Disney is 17 years old. Drawing isn't a hobby. It isn't a talent to show off at family dinners. It's a language, the only one that's ever felt completely natural to him. But even more than drawing, Disney has something harder to name, a feeling for how a line moves, how a curve carries weight, how the difference between a hand drawn slowly and a hand drawn fast changes everything the eye believes. He doesn't just draw things, he makes things feel like they're alive. And slowly, in those first quiet paid jobs, he discovers that nobody else is doing that yet. But a skill without a market is just a habit. And Kansas City in 1919 was not a city that knew what to do with a teenage boy who could draw. So Disney does the only logical thing. He goes looking for someone who needs what his hand can do. He finds them, local businesses, a movie theater that needs a short animated clip, a shop that needs something to catch the eye. He draws it, they pay. He draws the next one. Nothing glamorous about this. Nothing cinematic about sitting alone at a drawing table making ads for businesses that'll be forgotten in a decade. But something is happening inside that work that only becomes visible later. Disney is learning what drawing can do to people, how a line can make someone stop, how movement pulls the eye in a way that a still image never can. He's not learning to draw better. He's learning how to make a room lean forward. In 1921, he takes the next step. Laugh-O-Gram Studio. Real animators. Real films. A real audience. And then, in 1923, it collapses. Not slowly, completely. The studio closes. The money is gone. The team scatters. Disney is 21 years old, standing in a city that has no more use for him, with $40 in his pocket and one suitcase. He buys a train ticket to Hollywood. What carries him there, what bankruptcy cannot take, is not confidence, not bravado. something quieter. He knows what his hand can do. He's watched people pay for it. He's seen what happens when a drawing moves, how a room changes, how people lean forward. That knowledge isn't in a bank account. It's in his hands. And nobody can foreclose on that.
On the other side of the world, same decade, completely different universe. A 15-year-old boy arrives in Tokyo with nothing but curiosity and calluses on his hands. His name is Soichiro Honda. Where Disney's gift was in the eye, Honda's gift was in the hand. In a different sense, the mechanical hand. The hand that doesn't draw the world, it fixes it. Growing up in Hamamatsu, Honda was surrounded by machines. His father repaired bicycles. From the time Honda was small, he understood one thing intuitively. A broken machine is not a dead machine. It's a machine asking a question. And questions have answers. At 15, he goes to work at Art Shokai, an auto repair shop in Tokyo. He shows up as an errand boy. And here's what that actually meant. For nearly 2 years, he wasn't allowed to touch a single engine. He watched, brought tea, swept metal shavings off the floor, handed wrenches to men who had earned the right to use them. Every day, the engines he wanted, just out of reach. But Honda memorizes everything. Every repair that comes through that shop, stored not in a notebook, but in his hands. In his understanding of why things break and what it takes to make them hold. By the time he's trusted with actual repairs, he has already fixed hundreds of engines in his mind. Years later, he stakes one of his first major independent bets on piston rings. Small components he's certain he can manufacture better than anyone else. He's wrong. First batch fails, rejected. He goes back, tries again, rejected again. Most people at this point take that as a signal. Maybe this isn't for me. Honda takes it as a different kind of signal. I don't understand something yet. I need to understand it. He eventually does. Toyota becomes one of his earliest major customers. A company of that size, one that had once said no, could no longer ignore what he had learned to build. The obsession had become useful. Useful enough that someone would pay for it. Disney had a line in motion. Honda had machines. Chanel had taste, sharpened into rebellion. Different tools, same starting point. And in a borrowed room in France, in that same restless, changing world, Gabrielle Chanel had a different gift entirely. She could feel when something was wrong. Not broken, not the way a machine is broken. Wrong in a subtler way. Wrong the way a room feels wrong when the furniture is arranged for appearance and not for living. Chanel grew up understanding fabric. She learned to sew as a girl, worked as a seamstress as a young woman. But her skill wasn't just technical. She had an eye for proportion, for what belonged and what didn't, that most people who work with cloth never develop. And when she looked at the women around her, what she saw was wrong. The fashion of the early 1900s dressed women the way a stage dresses a set, for visual impact, for spectacle, for the impression of others. Corsets that made breathing difficult, skirts that made movement slow, hats that were not hats, they were architecture. Chanel looked at all of it and thought, none of this is made for the woman who actually wears it. When she gets access to a room at Etienne Balsan's estate outside Paris, she doesn't design a collection. She makes hats. Simple ones, clean lines, no ornament,
nothing that doesn't need to be there. Hats a woman could put on in the morning without reconstructing her entire posture. The women at the estate try them on. Something happens on their faces that's hard to name exactly, but easy to recognize. Relief. They buy them. By 1910, Chanel opens her first boutique, 21 Rue Cambon, Paris. Hats only. No legacy. No label. No story yet. Just the thing itself. Made well, made honestly, made for the person who would actually wear it. Within 3 years, the boutique funds a second location, then clothing, then the perfume that will outlive everyone in the story.
Chanel didn't conquer fashion. She corrected it. The way you correct something that's been wrong for so long, everyone forgot it was wrong. 3 people, 1 era. The world they were born into was disappearing, and the world that replaced it hadn't decided yet what it needed, who it would pay, what it valued. That uncertainty was the opening. Disney walked into it with a line that could move. Honda walked into it with a wrench. Chanel walked into it with a needle and a point of view. None of them knew at the beginning what their skill would become. Disney didn't know he was building a mythology. Honda didn't know he was building an engineering culture. Chanel didn't know she was redefining what it means to dress a woman. They just knew what their hands could do. And they found someone who needed it. The rest, the parks, the motorcycles, the perfume, came later. Much later. A line in motion. A wrench. A needle. Before the companies, that was all there was. And it was enough to begin. What do you have? Not someday, not after the plan is perfect, not after someone gives you permission. What do you have right now that someone else might need? Start there.